Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 28th October 2016. Now, the first article is related to the polygamy. Now, let's understand what is polygamy. It stands for having multiple relationships for a man or a woman. So, it has two types in it. One is polyandry and another one is polygamy. A man marrying multiple women is polygamy, and a woman marrying multiple men is polyandry. Now, the issue we are discussing is about polygamy and the important relationship of it with the religion. So, there are arguments which are going on triple talaq and then halala and polygamy. In this, the triple talaq, it refers to a divorce practice in the Islamic religion. So, as per the original text of the Islam, the talaq has to be spread over 90 days, and all the other options shall be explored before the third time, that is, which is non-revocable, is been applied. So it means the instant talaq is not in accordance with the Quran interpretations. So here we need to understand that a religious text has multiple interpretations over a period of time. A liberal interpretation of the Quran, it has allowed for the instant talaq. The Supreme Court of India in the Shamim Ara case has clearly declared that instant triple talaq is not in accordance with the Quran connotations. And second, what is halala means? So it is an interim marriage before marrying the same husband again. So, for example, in a fit of rage, if instant talaq is been applied, then the woman has to go through an intermittent marriage to remarry the husband again. This process is called as halala. And polygamy, a man can marry multiple women, that is polygamy. In this scenario, the issue or debate of gender equality and constitutional rights for women is being majorly focused or concentrated on triple talaq. So we need to change this particular dialogue. So with regard to the polygamy. Now why the polygamy has come up in the Islamic context? So when these wars are going on, there are many women who have become widows and children who are abandoned. To protect these orphans, the Quran has allowed for marrying of these men to these women. So the purpose of polygamy is to ensure that the orphans are protected. But over a period of time, the situation has changed. So here we need to remember one thing. So nothing is constant. As the societies change over a period of time, and the law also has to change in reflection to the changing society, then only the law remains relevant. So here, new interpretations have to come to Quran, and polygamy is being used in a different context. Now the Supreme Court, instead of declaring polygamy as illegal through a legal mechanism, it can adopt that the polygamy is not according with the Quranic prescription, or it is not in the interpretation of the Quran. It can give or else a new interpretation to Quran on this perspective, rather than bringing a new law deposing it off. Now he also compares that with Hindu Marriage Act. Let's take Hindu Marriage Act allows for only one marriage for the men. But however, if you see the population statistics, the bigamy is very much prevalent among the Hindu men. In spite of this, because of the codification of the law, the second wife of a Hindu man do not get equal rights with first wife, and her children do not get any share in the property of this man. So, the rights of equality are being lost to the second wife. It is being some undefined social norms or morals are being prescribed over here. So, it is also a form of inequality. So, if you bring in a legal code or a codified law among Muslims too, the same problem is expected to be repeated here too. So, unnecessarily creating of confusion, judiciary through interpretation of the Quran can declare as polygamy is not valid in this context. So, if not, it may be subjected to a new kind of inequality which the women are facing in Hindu religion. So that's what his author talks about. Now, the Maduro faces rough weather. It is about Venezuela politics. I am not going to see Venezuela in particular. If you see the countries which are dependent on commodity prices, now, if you talk about Brazil, the leftist government in Brazil, Venezuela, all these countries they have went through a slew of welfare measures when the commodity prices are very high. Now the countries are facing an economic crisis now. So the subsidies and welfare expenditure, which has left to the major fiscal deficit of these economies, and also it has brought in an hyperinflation spiral now. So there were no institutions and systemic measures were taken up when these countries are wealthy. The problems were also not visible because they had the surplus money in their hands. Once the oil prices have come down and their revenues went south, when their revenues slipped, these countries are facing an economic challenge and economic downturn now. So it means the economic policies or failures will always have political outcomes. Now, if you take the Brazil, Ms. Dilma Rousseff, she was impeached in Brazil. And the similar situation is also being faced by Maduro Nicolas in Venezuela. So this is what is the situation. It is not only of most of the South American economies. Even if you see oil dependent Saudi Arabia, it is also going through a crisis situation. Now, leftist governments in South America are given away for the rightist governments due to this crisis situation now. And also the monarchies in West Asia are facing a crisis situation because of the low oil prices. Now, into the perspective page. Now, the GST. What is GST stands for Goods and Services Tax. And the theme over here is one nation shall have one tax. So, in this context, all the indirect taxes need to be replaced by one tax that is called GST. If you see the constitutional tax distribution, the sales tax etc. are being distributed to the state list. Excise duties, customs duties, service tax like indirect taxes are in the union list. So in a nutshell, indirect taxes are being distributed between union and the states as per Indian constitution. Now if we want to bring in GST, then obviously the state's autonomy need to be compromised. And states also have the fear that their revenues may come down because of the imposition of GST. In this scenario, the center has promised for a compensation for next 5 years if they are losing the revenues. So here, a new proposals have come up, which are threatening the one nation, one tax system. One is, instead of one tax rate, the government wants to bring in at least four tax rates. And the second thing is, the center wants to impose cess on luxury goods to provide for the compensation to the states. Third thing is, the administration of the tax will be by both center and the states. So these three things go against uniform tax, single tax rate, uniform tax administration. So because of the cess and multiple tax rates, it is going to bring back the world complex system into place again. Now, Niti Aayog chairman Arvind Panagaria, he has clearly stated that what is the purpose of GST? It is not about creating one nation, one tax. It is about creating one nation and common tax rate for all the products across the states. It means that for a particular product, the tax rate will be the same across all the states in the country, rather than all the products having one single tax rate. So that's what is Arvind Panagaria's interpretation of the GST in Indian context. But however, any such attempt is going to bring in complexity from the customer and also the businessman perspective. So here, the first thing is the center has to take the responsibility to ensure that the revenues of the states are not being lost. So it has to come through, this commitment has to come through from the notions of improved tax beyond same. Whereas the GST is being implemented, the tax revenues are bound to go up and the excess tax revenues which are been coming up shall be used by the center to compensate the states rather than imposing a special cess on the luxury goods. Now, can we define the luxury goods in a country such as India? Luxury good in one state may be an essential good in the other state, as the income differences across the states are too high. And finally, coming to tax administration, the dual administration of the tax, it will pose many complexities. In this context, the tax collection can be given to the state administration where the center can exercise monitoring and supervisory control. So in this way, we can bring in a simple and uniform tax structure in the country. And identifying one single tax rate is always a problem, is always a dilemma. So, if you say the Lafler's curve, so it says that there has to be an optimal tax rate to maximize the revenue of the government. But what is this rate has to be based on the size of the economy or based on various parameters, and this golden mean or golden number was never able to been achieved by the economists till now. So India also is going through that particular dilemma. What has to be a single tax rate number? And the second argument again is this is if all the products are subjected to one single tax rate, it leads to inflationary pleasures because the essential goods shall not be subjected to the same tax rate as the luxury goods. That is what is counter argument to this. Now, how to judge the judges? So, in India, the judiciary is facing a huge task of accountability crisis. So, why this accountability crisis existing in judiciary? So, there is no proper performance appraisal system for the judges, and there is no uniformity of the judgments across the states in the similar cases. And the third thing is we do not have an independent evaluation of entire judicial system in comparison to the other countries, and huge pending of cases and misuse of the contempt of the court and judicial activism. All these are questioning the judicial accountability in India. In this case, to improve the judicial accountability, bringing in performance evaluation measure to the judges is one important step forward. If you see the Western countries, the European Commission brings in a chart that is what is improving or bringing in comparison between various countries of its members or various member countries. So similarly, US also conducts the judges appraisal and puts it transparently before the people for them to elect the judges. So the similar system which is unique to India in Indian circumstances shall be devised by the judiciary for itself. If any outsider is devising that, it may lead to compromise of the independence of the judiciary. So judiciary in a transparent manner involving all the stakeholders, it has to devise the same system. So this is what is called the judicial accountability improvement. So here the European system is called justice scorecard. Similarly, we also can bring in justice scorecard by comparing various high courts in India for Indian context. So that can be an improvement. Now coming to the world, here if you see there is a report that is what is called Living Planet Report. So it says that world life or else the wildlife of the world is decreasing by 2% every year. So on an average from 1970, it has been decreased by 58%. So there is a significant loss of biodiversity. What are the reasons for the wildlife loss? The major reason being loss of habitat. So what is this loss? Why this loss of habitat? Human intervention. So that need to be arrested. Now coming to the degree screening goes digital. What does that mean? Now if we carefully observe, we have to submit our degree certificates at various places and they can be misused, and sometimes employers tries to take the original certificates and harasses the people from leaving the company. So now what the government is promoting is the national a digital library for the accounts of student academic records. So it means it is called as National Academic Depository. It's an account of student academic records. So it helps us to, submit any record to the employer digitally. We don't need, for example, tomorrow you are applying for UPSC, just you can give a link for your or permission for the UPSC to download all your academic records from your depository rather than submitting them every year for UPSC. So this is what is going to improve the system. Now coming to the Center for in Principle Share Sale in some PSUs. Now here we need to understand the strategic sale. It means the management control of the PSU will also go into the private hands. The government wants to disinvest even the profit making companies, and it wants to go for the strategic disinvestments. It has the targets of 20,500 crores through strategic disinvestment, around 30,000 crore rupees to the minority stake sale. And added to that, India and Bhutan also have signed a Trade and Transit Pact. Instead of it being said as signed, they have just revived the Trade and Transit Pact, which has exhausted this year. So this is what is about today's news articles. So thank you very much and all the best. The notes is we will be uploading the notes today. Please take a look at www.civilsprep.com. See the notes over here. So thank you very much. All the best.